If you don't sign over the deed by Friday, I will ruin you in court for hiding marital assets, my husband snarled through the phone. In the background, I could hear the rhythmic crash of ocean waves and the giggling voice of his 24-year-old assistant uncorking vintage champagne. He genuinely thought he had backed me into a corner. He had broken into my private coastal sanctuary, brought his mistress into my bed, and somehow convinced himself that I was the criminal for keeping the property in my own name. What Derek didn't know was that every single light fixture, thermostat, and smoke alarm in that beach house was wired directly to my private security network. I wasn't panicking. I was watching them in real-time 4K resolution. And while he prepared to extort me, I was preparing to hand his corporate board the financial evidence that would destroy him. Welcome to BT Revenge Tales. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Lauren Hayes. At 34, I thought I had built an unshakable life. For 6 years, I was married to Derek, a fiercely ambitious vice president at a regional logistics firm. On paper, we were the picture of suburban success. But beneath that polished surface, Derek had an insatiable appetite for prestige and a reckless habit of spending money we didn't have to impress people he didn't even like. 3 years ago, when my grandmother passed away, she left me a modest financial legacy. Knowing Derek's compulsion to drain every liquid dollar into risky speculative ventures, I didn't hand him the check. Instead, I quietly purchased a secluded beachfront property along the rugged Oregon coast. I placed it entirely inside an irrevocable premarital trust, legally separated from our marital estate. It was never meant to be a weapon. It was my private sanctuary, a quiet place where I could sit by the ocean, read, and breathe whenever the suffocating weight of Derek's demands grew too heavy. I never told him about it, because I knew the moment he found out, he would try to claim it as his own. On a crisp Thursday evening, Derek walked into our kitchen with an exaggerated sigh, dropping his leather briefcase onto the island. He smoothed back his hair and announced that his corporate board had scheduled an urgent, all-weekend strategy retreat in Seattle. He claimed closing this multi-million-dollar logistics contract would finally secure his promotion to senior partner. I packed his garment bag without a word, watching him check his reflection in the hallway mirror with that practiced, self-satisfied smirk. The next morning, an hour after his car pulled away toward the airport, I went into my home office to file our quarterly property taxes. That was when I noticed the heavy mahogany drawer of my private filing cabinet was slightly ajar. The lock had been picked, leaving tiny scratches on the brass trim. Inside, the metal lockbox was empty. The biometric access keycard to my coastal sanctuary was gone, along with the paper deed containing the exact GPS coordinates. My hands didn't shake. Instead, a cold wave of absolute clarity washed over me. At exactly 2 o'clock that afternoon, my phone chimed on the desk. It was an automated security alert from my coast property 400 miles away. Front gate biometric override accepted. I opened my laptop, typed in the encrypted password, and brought up the high-definition security feeds. The wide-angle camera mounted near the cedar entrance framed the scene with brutal clarity. Derek walked through the front doors carrying designer luggage, followed closely by Chloe, his 24-year-old executive assistant. She was wearing oversized designer sunglasses, twirling around my vaulted living room while admiring the floor-to-ceiling panoramic view of the Pacific Ocean. I watched in absolute silence as Derek pulled a bottle of vintage champagne from his travel cooler. With an arrogant laugh, he popped the cork straight toward my hand-carved mantle. "I told you I'd secure an exclusive private getaway for us," he bragged, wrapping an arm around her waist. "My wife is too small-minded to ever appreciate a place like this. She thinks saving every penny in boring index funds is living. This house is where real players belong." Chloe giggled, pressing her glass against his as they toasted to their illicit weekend. Every single word was picked up by the ceiling-mounted, noise-canceling audio sensors. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I methodically created a new encrypted folder labeled evidence. I'd backed up every time-stamped 4K video file to 3 secure cloud servers, capturing the exact moments of unauthorized entry, property misuse, and unvarnished corporate betrayal. At 7 o'clock that evening, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was Derek. I tapped speakerphone and listened to the background noise. Beneath his voice, the unmistakable, rhythmic roar of the Pacific tide echoed clearly. "Hey, Lauren," he sighed, pitching his voice into a tired, overworked rasp. "Just wanted to check in. We've been locked in this windowless hotel conference room in Seattle since noon. The board is running us ragged. I'll probably be trapped in meetings all weekend." "That sounds exhausting, Derek," I replied calmly. "Make sure you step outside. The coastal air has a way of clearing the mind." The line went dead silent for 2 agonizing seconds. He knew. When he spoke again, all pretense of exhaustion vanished, replaced by pure venom. "You deceitful liar," he snarled. "You bought a prime beachfront mansion and hid it from your own husband? How dare you keep marital assets from me while I break my back working for this family? You're a selfish fraud, Lauren. You picked my private lock and broke into my property," I said evenly. "This is half mine by law," he screamed into the receiver. "You sign over joint deed ownership by Monday morning, or I'll drag you through court and strip you of every dime." "I'll have my attorney draw up the paperwork for Monday morning," I said quietly, keeping my tone perfectly measured. "Let's handle this like professionals." Derek let out a triumphant scoff before hanging up, convinced his intimidation had broken me. But the moment the call disconnected, my fingers flew across the keyboard. Through the remote smart home application, I revoked the biometric keycard permissions and engaged the reinforced electromagnetic locks on the exterior perimeter gates, sealing the property shut. Next, I shut down the heating grid and cut power to the main living quarters, plunging the oceanfront house into near-freezing coastal darkness. Then, I opened a separate encrypted browser tab. Over the past 3 months, as Derek's arrogance had grown, I had quietly cross-referenced our joint tax returns with his public corporate filings. The numbers had never added up. Within 2 hours, I assembled an irrefutable forensic dossier, corporate credit card statements proving Derek had billed his luxury weekend getaways, expensive jewelry gifts, and Chloe's private travel accommodations directly to his company's client entertainment budget. By midnight, the complete digital package, combining time-stamped 4K surveillance footage, unauthorized entry records, and systematic corporate embezzlement evidence, was queued for immediate delivery to the regional district attorney and his corporate board. On Monday morning at 10 o'clock sharp, I walked into the downtown legal conference room. Derek was already seated at the head of the mahogany table, looking disheveled, cold, and exhausted from his dark coastal weekend, but still brimming with arrogant bluster. Chloe sat in the corner holding a designer purse, looking entirely out of place. "Sign the joint ownership transfer, Lauren," Derek demanded, sliding a thick manila folder across the table toward me. "And maybe I won't sue you for intentional financial concealment." I didn't touch his folder. Instead, my attorney placed a certified, legally ironclad document on the table. This coastal property was acquired entirely through premarital family inheritance, my attorney stated calmly. "It is held under an irrevocable private trust. Mr. Hayes, you have 0 legal claim, 0 equity, and 0 spousal right to that estate." Before Derek could shout, the double doors of the conference room swung open. 2 detectives from the Financial Crimes Division entered, followed by the chief compliance auditor from Derek's firm. The auditor laid a thick binder directly in front of him. "Derek Hayes," the lead detective announced, "you're under arrest for grand larceny, systematic corporate expense fraud, and felony unauthorized breaking and entering." Derek's smug sneer instantly collapsed into sheer, breathless horror. The fallout was swift and absolute. Within 48 hours, the board terminated Derek's executive position and froze his severance packages. Facing multiple felony fraud indictments, he was forced to liquidate his personal vehicles and deplete his savings just to cover criminal defense retainers. The moment his financial ruin became certain, Chloe walked away, without looking back, completely vanishing from his life. My divorce was finalized in record time. Because the financial fraud and bad faith misconduct were irrefutably documented, I walked away with all my assets untouched, without paying a single dollar in spousal support or legal fees. Last night, I sat on the cedar deck of my coastal sanctuary, listening to the gentle crash of the Pacific tide under a clear, starlit sky. The house felt warmer and lighter than it ever had before. Derek tried to break into my private sanctuary to steal my peace, but he only succeeded in exposing his own greed and destroying his own future. Now, I want to hear from all of you. If you discovered your partner broke into your private property and tried to extort you, how would you have handled it? Comment below with your thoughts and let me know which city you are watching from. Thank you for watching BT Revenge Tales, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss another story of sweet justice.